Today my guest is Richard Campbell. Richard, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Richard, I'm thrilled to have you on my show because I'm a fan.
Ah,
I love all your podcasts, .NET Rocks, Hansel Minutes, Run as Radio, Mondays when you do it.
We just did one.
You did?
Just
Okay.
published a new Run Days, first time in a year.
Okay.
And you know, the joke of all of those shows is Mondays is hardest.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we admit it's a complete waste of time. And you know how they mark some stuff as not safe for work?
That's putting it mildly.
No, I call Mondays not safe for humans. Right? Like, yeah, don't listen to that. It's not good.
Okay, that's good advice from Richard Campbell. Don't listen to him on Mondays.
It's pure therapy, right? I mean, that's all it is for us. And it's a nightmare to edit. It's just one of those things. And really, the challenge is it's become four friends who are trying to make each other laugh. And getting those four friends in a place where we can all record is very hard.
They'll just accept it.
It just doesn't happen very
Especially because of you. You're in Vancouver.
Actually, I'm the least of the problems. It's mostly Mark and Karen. And without Mark and Karen, honestly, I don't think you have a show. I mean, I, for the most part, feel like I'm a laugh track for Monday.
You're Ed McMahon.
Yeah, that's it. That's my job. But the dynamic between the two of them, like, if you ever have an opportunity to have dinner with Mark and Karen, go.
I look forward to it.
You will never laugh more in your life.
Will they be at the summit, or will Mark go?
Entirely possible. We should probably work something out there. But it is an event.
I want to talk to you about it. So here's the backstory.
Okay.
It was like 2 years ago. I'm listening to Hansel Minutes, and you're on, which you're periodically on that show.
We do those Hansel Minutia shows?
Yeah, it was one of those. I'm pretty sure it was a Hansel Minutes show, but I remember that this came up, that you said, oh yeah, just came back from some trip to Nepal or something like that, and some part of the world far away, and you were starting up communities there. This is something you do on a semi-regular basis.
Well, Nepal's a different thing in the sense that if you don't have electricity, it's pretty hard to be a programmer. And where we're going in the Kumdu, there is no electricity. So it's just, that's at a different stage.
I made up Nepal, but it was somewhere.
But I'm definitely going to Nepal, and I'm going back to Nepal this year in 2011, which is unusual for me. I usually don't want to go to the same place twice. Until I've been everywhere, I'm not going back, right? Okay. I'm working on it.
So you sort of threw that out. I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And then you moved on to some other minutiae. I want to hear the rest of the story. So that's why you're here today, because I want to hear the story of what you're doing traveling around the world with these developer communities.
Well, so imagine you're good at telling stories, right? That's actually your talent. You know your way around software development. You know how to teach, and you want to change the world. Like, you want to do the best thing you could do.
Okay.
Right?
And you are good at telling stories.
And I'm passionate about software development, and so there was this realization that all you need to make a living as a developer is a laptop, a little bit of power, and an internet connection. Location's irrelevant, and you get into developing countries. So, you get into, and these days I'm not even talking about India and Pakistan anymore, but you look at a place like Tunisia. There is no middle class. You're either very, very wealthy or you're very poor. There's nothing in between. And there's really no way to be in between. And so the young, intelligent, but not high caste or high class folks in that country, they leave.
Because there's no opportunities.
There's nothing else to do. They come to America, on H-1Bs, or they go to Western Europe or something like that. They leave. There's no other way for it to function. And when you realize that that's absolutely not necessary. Like, if you want to immigrate. But immigrate because you want to live somewhere else. Don't immigrate because you can't work. Because you can work where you are. And that was sort of the kernel of an idea of, let's go into these places, find great people, and help them cultivate their own development communities. Put on their own conferences, put on their own code matches, and help each other learn, and learn how to find the work, and do the work there. So, and there's a funny side effect that when you start doing that, when you keep that mind in the country, it's what he does outside of work that's important. Right? That's the really disruptive thing, is now you have someone who's making a decent income. He's maybe paid a quarter what he would have been paid if he'd come to the U.S., maybe even less. But his cost of living is a 10th or a 20th.
Right.
So actually, in net wealth, he's ahead, but he's middle class.
Right.
In a place that you just can't have them. So it's disruptive. They start fixing schools, right? They start improving their neighborhood. They change things where they are.
Disruptive in the sense that it's revolutionary. It's changing the world.
That's the side effect. So the question is, how do you get there?
Yeah.
Right? Like, get to that point. So Microsoft has programs where they will often go into developing countries and put on small conferences. And so we got involved with those. And that was our sort of engine to identify the leaders that are local. I mean, you need a local leader. There's no two ways about it. Once in a while, we get lucky. We'd hit a local leader somewhere else.
Right.
You know, I'm in Turkey. I'm in Istanbul, and meet a guy who's from Egypt, and they're totally self-identified. Okay, these are the folks that when you're finished the talk, they're on you. And they're not on you for an autograph or a photo or anything like that. They want to pick your brain. They want to pick your brain. They want to know, and they're not asking questions about software, but they're asking questions about how do I get to do what you do? How do I, I want to speak. How do I do more of these sorts of things? They're totally self-identifying. So as long as we kept putting ourselves on stage and in places, these people come up. And you get to know them, and then you try and create an Indigenous conference, right? That's usually the linchpin. Is the first conference is completely Microsoft run. And we're often on stage with government folks, and they have a plan about how the stuff's going to go forward, which doesn't actually work. But it's all good.
Economies don't work.
Yeah. Well, and it's very interesting to be with the Minister of Technology for a given country,
right.
And they only think in big business. They don't think in small business. In a place like that, small business doesn't even occur to them. And in some ways, small business is almost illegal in some of these countries. Like, there's no way for you to be a business. The actual process of getting the paperwork in place, of getting a business permit, is almost insurmountable.
I see.
So often these things have to be completely Indigenous. They're guys working in a basement,
right?
And not that they're breaking the law per se. They're just working, but that they can't go through the formal trappings of business for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so, once you identify those couple of individuals that you can start building an Indigenous conference and working through those things, even then, there's opportunities with external support. Again, Microsoft has a program specifically around providing money for Indigenous development in developing nations.
Okay.
And so we were able to help that process along, and we'll come out for the conference as well, but it's got to be organized locally. Like, we want the local people doing it, and it has a totally different feel than the one that is done from the top down.
Right.
You get more of that.
Well, it's not totally local. Somebody's mentoring them, helping them.
We're absolutely.
Is that you?
Yes, that's us.
Okay.
Right? And I work with a few folks that we're all into this thing for exactly the same reason. It's like, this is the best thing I feel like I could be doing to make a difference. And so we find these folks, and we help them along on how to do those things, but the main thing is it's their location. Help them with topics, bring in a few ringer speakers, just folks that they can anchor things. Got to have some local speaking talent as well, and try and get it self-sustaining. Try it again and again and again, and until you get it. But the main thing that happens is you get to this idea that developers talking to other developers make better developers.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's in the end, that's the core idea. Can we get to that point? And that sparks a little light that spreads. We did a bunch of work in Egypt where these guys are making $1 a day selling stuff at the pyramids. And they're maybe only making $100 a day as a developer, but it's epically more.
Right.
It's a tiny amount of money from our perspective, but they're well off. They're doing very well for themselves, and wages go up a little more, but they bring in little friends. Mm-hmm. And more people want to develop because it's an opportunity. And there's a hunger there like it's hard to find in a developed nation.
Sure.
That kind of hunger about making, I'm trying to do better for myself, for my family, that whole thing, it's really a powerful drive in a place like that. And again, they're very self-selecting. They pull themselves together, and it's about helping them find the work, right? And there's always development projects out there, and getting them productive in teams, and sort of getting the trappings in place, and then off they go. And best thing in the world is to see that he's still growing and you're not there.
So you're providing that spark to sort of when you go away.
Yeah,
getting that.
But your goal, you've got to be able to walk away from it, right? But I'm really excited to see that a place that I worked 5 years ago, inviting me to the conference I originally helped put together.
To give me an example of where that happened.
Absolutely in Egypt, that's going on.
Yeah, so you were there 5 years ago?
It's hard to keep track of years.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there a few years ago, and I just got
you went back again.
I just got an invitation to their event in March.
And that's completely Indigenous. There's nobody mentoring. They've
not anymore.
themselves.
Yeah. Those guys are now
so now there is a development community.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, Cairo's a massive place. It's hard to get your head around. There's millions of people living in Cairo, and there's all been development there for a long time. But we're lighting up other kinds of communities that are they got a very much of that code camp feel. They do it that way. I got invited by Microsoft Pakistan to go to a conference. This is in the Musharraf years, so the previous leader of Pakistan. Things are pretty unstable and very dangerous in Pakistan right now. In Karachi, I think this is 2006. And it was a top-down type show, biggest hotel in Karachi, which is the Pearl, and they got seats for 2,000. They sold out in a day. They're all 20-somethings. They're young, in college or just out of college, incredibly hungry. And my transcendent moment, the thing that this is why you do this stuff. I'm in the speaker's lounge, and they put on a private lunch in the speaker's lounge, and there are these kids that are going to introduce you to your lunch, right? To explain the different courses and so forth. Now, I mean, I eat pretty usually anyway, so it doesn't bother me, but it's fine.
Vancouver, where the food is very diverse.
Very diverse food. I'm eating it, but I'm going to let the guy do his thing. But it's obvious to me he has been coached to the nth degree. You will not speak until spoken to. He's vibrating, and so I let him do the whole spiel, and then I sit down to eat, and I'm like, "Are you going to eat?" He says, "Oh no, I eat at a different time." And he's just standing there. He's still vibrating. What's your name? So I'm the first white guy he's ever met, right? I mean, he lives in Karachi, right? And he's a young guy, and we end up we go tearing down a path of conversation about the West versus the Mideast that okay, stop. I want to have this conversation with you, but this is a 4-hour conversation, and I've got a session in an hour. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to eat. I'm going to go do my session. I have no sessions tomorrow. I'll come back for lunch, and then I'll spend the whole afternoon, and we'll talk as much as you want. And meantime, I'm going to spend the evening brushing up on my history, because obviously this is going to be important to you. And so the next day, come back, 6 of his friends. And we spent the whole afternoon just talking through the perception of the West versus the perception of the Mideast. And we talked about stuff like East Timor, which thank goodness I'd read up. But talk about it. It's just an incredibly rewarding experience. I feel like I influenced their perception of the West.
Absolutely. You were a representative of all Westerners, all white people, all foreigners.
But the take and just getting a sense of these. And remember, these are best and brightest. These are the very sharpest young minds in Pakistan that want to be software developers, and their schooling system is sophisticated, but it's totally on merit. It's free if you get the marks. And so very, very, very sharp and very broadly educated. So just really powerful conversations. I mean, that's the thing that you find when you jump into these things. This is not about smart or dumb. It's about access to education. It's
right.
And how they get a chance to see the world in the environment they're brought up in. Egypt is an interesting challenge. The sort of traditional Egyptian is a Coptic Christian, and they're a small minority to the Arab Muslim majority. And there's a very challenging balance between those two. They go back and forth, and they see the world very differently. And so, as a Westerner, when you go into situations like that, you've just got to listen. So, one of the dynamics I found when we were working with the Egyptian group that started doing serious development is the staff was all Muslim women and Coptic men. A Muslim man generally is fairly hard to find as a programmer, and they won't work in that environment.
I see.
Right? So it's just interesting to see, and if you're going to, as that company grew up and the guys who were leading it get more serious, there's a ritual, a very complicated ritual to hiring someone, especially a Muslim girl. You have to meet her father. It's not up. You have to break bread with her father.
So that's something as an outsider you wouldn't know.
Well, when we'd come in to visit, we had to do a variety of dinners. That's the culture, right? And that was mostly meeting fathers. It rewarding, but you got to listen, and you've got to realize how different the rules are and how those things work. So, since that whole thing started off, and really the catalyst of this was a friend of mine, Stephen Forte, who lived in New York and was there in 9/11. And after that, we had some very serious conversations. And he said, "Look, it's fine to make money. It's fun to build software. How do we change the world?" And this was the thing that we realized was, how do we make a real difference? This is how you make a real difference. And so that's what we've been working on now, better part of 10 years.
I'm hearing you that you're not only changing the world as far as relates to technology, but as far as it relates to human relationships.
Well, and that's the joke, right? Technology is all well and fine, but if you're going to change the world, it's really about changing people's opportunities and working on those relationships. And we come at it from a technical angle because it's what we're good at. Right.
And it's a connection you have with the people.
And it's just, and being able to tell a good story is part of that. So I'm leveraging my skill set. This is my limitation, right? That's what I'm good at. How am I going to make a difference with that skill set?
Does the language ever become a barrier?
Software development's done in English. It's extraordinary, right? And generally speaking, everywhere we've gone, and I'm sure there's exceptions, the guys who want to be software developers speak brilliant English. They may not hear it well, like you have to, and often culturally it's not acceptable to not understand you, so you have to be very careful that they do understand you.
Sure.
They would never let on.
Right.
And typically if a room won't ask questions, it's a cultural issue.
Right.
It's not when you get into the Oriental cultures, asking a question of a teacher is an insult.
Sure.
So they tend to shy away from that. And in Middle Eastern cultures, you often run into you can't dare look foolish, and to ask a question is admit you don't know something. I did some teaching in Malaysia where culturally the people were so shy they couldn't ask questions. And so I left my email. I gave them a Dropbox, an email box to ask questions in. It's completely anonymous. And every night I'd have a stack of email.
And you would answer one of the blogs.
In the morning, I would answer them in front of the class.
Okay.
Right? But I would not name names. I said, there was a question about.
Interesting.
But it was just you had to find a way to let that shyness not impede them learning.
Yeah.
So, again, interesting challenge.
Absolutely. And Malcolm Gladwell speaks about that a little bit in Outliers, about the cultural differences and how that somehow inhibits communication. And
it wasn't until later in the week that they finally got comfortable enough with me to ask questions. And I think it was more about the fact that they realized that I could eat their food with chopsticks. There's a tendency, it's very easy there's different teaching styles. And one of the very common teaching styles, especially in technology, is this, I'm the smartest guy in the room. And if you don't understand this, it's because you're not that smart, right? Which I think is a failure.
Right.
I don't like that, but I recognize that it works.
Sometimes.
Right? It's in terms of being successful as a speaker in this community, it's a technique that often works.
You do need to have credibility.
You've got to have done some things.
Whether that credibility is to be the smartest guy in the room, I hope that's not the correct. I'm usually not.
Playing the smartest guy in the room game in these kinds of rooms is a dumb game to play.
Right, you're going to lose.
But when you see that sort of cultural phenomenon, that's the way people approach those things. Eating with your students breaks down barriers. Eating in general, that's the ultimate form of communication. Breaking bread is the ultimate, you start down an email, and maybe you move to instant messaging, and then to a telephone call, and then to a meeting, and then pizza, right? Pizza is the ultimate conversational lubricant. So having a meal with people you're trying to understand, there's no better way. And that's one of the side effects of doing this work in the Middle East was realizing that's a cultural imperative. Right? I cannot employ this Muslim girl until I've broken bread with her father. That's the rule. It's not a bad rule, really, when you think about it. The number of times we've done great things just because we sat down and had pizza together, broken down those barriers, talked through those things, I can't say enough about it. And in that dynamic, when you're trying to make a difference, you've got to first be influenced, and be influenced over food. It's much safer.
Excellent. Richard, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
That was a great story.
You bet.
I'm a big fan again.
Thanks. Great thing about code camps, stuff like Code Match, is that you get an opportunity to do a little technology and be with your friends.